All right. Mic check. I'm good. So I'm Max Ceron. CWB Association Welding podcast. Podcast. Today we have a really cool guest. Welding podcast.
The show is about to begin.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the CWB Association podcast. My name is Max Ceron, and as always, I'm checking out what's going on in the industry and bring you the best guests we can find. Today, I got Tabor Holt coming to me from Calgary, Alberta, Canada. Here, the wonderful wild west of Canada, which is I live right next door in Saskatchewan, so it's always good to have another Westerner on the show. Tabor, how you doing?
Very good. Thank you for having me on.
So, right off the top, Tabor, let's talk about the name. I'm sure you got to go through this story 1,000 times. Let's make this legit now. So if anybody ever asks you going forward, you just say, you know what, just check out this episode of the CWB Association podcast. They'll let you know. But, for me, from Saskatchewan, I think of Tabor. I think of Tabor, Alberta. I think of Tabor corn, which I was explaining to my friends in Ontario is some of the best tasting corn you'll ever try. It's magical. Does any of that have to do with your name?
It does. My dad was working in southern Alberta at the time that my mom and him were pregnant, and it was the 80s. Everyone started to get crazy names, and they said, you know what, Tabor would be a good name, and that's the origins of the name. My last name is Hole, so Cornhole, Tabor Hole. I've had endless amounts of ridicule and some interesting nicknames and stuff, and I still have somebody put a Tabor corn sign on my parents' driveway in grade 12, and I still don't know who did it. So I'm just trying to see who will reveal themselves for that.
Wow. And you don't think about that often, that there's going to be all these nicknames. And, I got a couple kids. I got made fun of quite a bit for my name. But I never took it too seriously. I guess it depends how sensitive you are to bullying. Everyone's got a different level, but you definitely try to pick names for your kids that aren't going to lead to bullying. You know what I mean? Do you got kids? Did you think about it?
We don't have kids, but I can tell you I've definitely thought about it. There's some first names that are not going to go with all, and so I think they're pretty easy to pick out.
Well, what's your spouse's last name?
Her last name is McWiggin, so it's an Irish name. So it was, she liked switching to Holt because it was shorter and easier when she was teaching as a grade 6 teacher. The students could understand it easier, but I guess we could have looked at switching either side, right?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Yeah, that's a cool Irish name. You can just switch to that, Then it could be like Riley McWiggin or something,
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so Tabor, tell us what you do. What is it? I can see your Miller jacket on here. Tell us what your job is, your day job.
Yeah, I'm actually the district manager for Southern Alberta and Southwest BC or Southeast BC for ITW. So I work for Illinois Tool Works, which is the owner of Miller, Bernard, Tregaskis, and Hobart. What we do is we sell equipment, filler metals, consumables, and we really started getting into the automation side as well. So we kind of started completing some projects on that side. So basically, the main company that I think everyone recognizes is Miller, and that's where I spend my day-to-day job, supporting distribution, supporting end users, a lot of troubleshooting, and so it's heavily welding focused.
Well, and I think that it's a generational thing. Like if you're younger, you'll know Miller for sure, right? But us old farts, there was a lot of Hobarts in our day. We still talk about the old Hobart machine. Use it for gouging; it'd never break down. That's the one, and big crank on the top. But there is still Hobart products out there. There's still Hobart products under the consumables line. I know I've seen cases of Hobart rods out there. I tried their new 718, the thinner diameter one, when they came out. It's a few years back now, but I remember I was kind of even shocked to see a pallet of Hobart tins come in because I kind of thought they had gotten out of the electrodes game.
Yeah, no, for sure. We've actually been doing a push on our Hobart line. The last quarter, last year, we were pushing heavily onto distribution and end users. And exactly like you said, getting people familiarized with the offerings that we still have. Like our metal core and flux core is kind of our more predominant line, I would say, in that filler metal world. But yeah, that's just something that we've been, working towards. And Hobart still sells the equipment. They're very equivalent to a miller machine, but very stripped down, a lot less technology in them. And so for some end users, they really like them. We sell them at, different kind of more retail
Like
businesses.
the Princess Autos or Canadian Tires and stuff like that. Yeah.
You bet. Yeah.
Awesome. So let's talk about how you got in that chair. So, what's your education? What career path took you down the road to end up working for ITW Miller?
Sure. Yeah, no, I'm born and raised in Edmonton. I was around construction pretty well my entire life. My grandfather owned a mechanical contracting business in Edmonton, and they serviced Western Canada. And my first welding shop I went into, I was 5 years old. And so I walked through there with my grandfather. He was an engineer. He did all the estimating and the project execution, a lot of the design work, but he had welding, electrical, mechanical, all under their umbrella, their company. And so I was always raised around construction. My grandpa was really interested in me becoming an engineer. My academics didn't allow that right out of the gate. So I was definitely not focused. And I think I struggled a lot. Like I enjoyed welding. I enjoyed being in fab shops. I started my apprenticeship as a welder, and I liked that type of work a lot. But really, my dad didn't do it. My grandpa didn't do it. So I wasn't really getting instructed by somebody teaching me. They were more on the business end of it, I guess is what I would say.
Get your butt to school.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's sort of a challenge we have with our industry as a whole, is that people want to join it, but not everyone has a garage. People live in condos. I live in a townhouse. It's not like I have a welding, rig in the back of my alley that someone can learn and experience it with. So that was sort of my upbringing. And but what I ended up doing is I did my first undergraduate degree in business. And I graduated business from Concordia in Edmonton. I had a really good time, really enjoyed it. But I kind of pushed off going to engineering, and there was an opportunity I saw in the welding engineering space because it was super unique, and not a lot of people were in it. And a friend of mine was going to the University of Montana, had a campus in Butte, Montana Tech, and he was studying geotech engineering. And he had known a little bit about my background. He said, they have a welding engineering program here I think you'd be interested in. You like skiing, you like the outdoors. This might be a good fit if you're interested. And so I went down there on a ski trip with him, met with the school, saw what it was all about, and I kind of started researching it around. And this was in 2009, and the University of Alberta program wasn't really fully set up yet. Waterloo had a program, and then two more in the United States, but really Montana made a lot of sense for me. It was a very small group going there, and so I ended up going there to do my degree in engineering and specialize in welding engineering, and graduated in 2012.
Well, the welding engineer spectrum is struggling with that classification in Canada still. It's we have what we call many engineering technician courses. So like the wet programs across Canada. We have one in Edmonton now. I believe there's a version of it in Calgary. I'm not sure. Conestoga has a large one out in Ontario. Waterloo has one. But aside from that, we haven't really been able to break through the engineering association's kind of hold on the designation for actual welding engineering, a designation under engineering, which is frustrating because it's kind of all over the world, and it's in the U.S., which is interesting because the U.S. doesn't really support welding as a vocation as well as Canada does. We support the welding designation much better under a standard nationalized Red Seal program in Canada, but we don't really support the engineering side of it. Why do you think that is? Like, I mean, do you ever attend those engineering association meetings and they're like, why not us?
See, like when I applied to become a professional engineer in Alberta, I had all my academics brought forward, and so they analyzed all my schooling, and I was, our school was certified with asset in the United States, and so they were sort of confused as well when they were doing my review because they didn't really understand the classes that we were doing, like 400 level physics of welding classes, things of that nature. And so even Apega, who has like 170,000 members, they were sort of stumped on it too. And so I think I had to do 2 approvals for it to get registered as an EIT. And so I agree with your point exactly, is that I don't think people fully understand the academia and even in the application of this, they don't really know where to place people in the work world as well. Because you're a mechanic. I'm similar. I think if I stayed one more semester, I could be a mechanical engineer, or one more semester, I could be a materials engineer. So you're sort of dipping into a lot of different fields.
Yeah.
And I think that's definitely what makes it uniquely challenging, I think, to be certified. And I think it's something that definitely as an industry, we should look into to kind of align that training, I would say, almost with end user opportunities as well as the certification. But quite frankly, there's just so few people going.
Well, I think there'd be more if people knew it was the opportunity of the branch, because the industry's dying for it. So right now, if you look at industry across Canada, what people do is they hire a materials engineer, or they hire a mechanical engineer and then try to cross-train them into welding. I've even heard of fluid dynamic engineers getting hired in and cross-trained into welding. Well, that seems like an unnecessary step when we could run very successful welding engineering programs in this country at the full, engineering level, like right out of, whether it's U of A, because they got the CCWJ up there, which all they do is welding stuff, and yet they don't have the designation specific to welding when they're done, which is so frustrating. Like, it must be frustrating even for the instructors and the students to be like, well, I don't want to be necessarily a materials engineer. I want to be a welding engineer, which is fluid dynamics. It is materials. It is mechanical. And, it's kind of a little bit of everything.
Well, and that's a great point. Like, I was sitting in meetings last year at ITW in Wisconsin, and we're talking about welding experience. And when we were finished the conversation, I kind of in my own head was like, I don't even think I think I'm more of a mechanical engineer. These guys are getting so much more. And then that was like, my training was welding, but my work career has been more mechanical, it almost seemed like. And so even from that point of view, like filler metal, welding equipment, design of welds, and like there were so many areas that we specialized in, that when you got into the workplace, you were kind of using a little piece of everything. But I think if there was a little bit more of a specialization, and especially if we could get it, if somebody, like when I graduated, I went straight into quality control. That's kind of was a natural fit. And so I was a CWB level 1 welding inspector, and I'm an EIT engineer. And so I went and worked in Conklin, right near Fort McMurray, doing SAG-D plants for Mag Energy, Synovus, in that little area. And so a lot of it was carbon steel piping, welding, pressure packages. But I was very ill-equipped for that line of business because it was all about regulation.
That's all procedural. It's all procedural, right? It's all document in, document out, or all the boxes filled, sign your name, next, right?
Yeah, for sure. And like interpretations of code books, B31.3, B31.1, pressure pipe, power pipe. And so that was a new experience in the work world, because really the SATE program, the WET program, they deal with all that. They see all that. They see the code books, and they see everything that's associated with the regulation side. And so that was kind of a difficult
transition.
Yeah, because you're working as an inspector, you're an engineer, and you're kind of in both worlds. And so I don't know what the proper training is for that. Like if you're a welder and then you want to go do an inspection course, that's great, you get it. But now it's heavy computer, it's heavy codes, it's heavy spec. So I don't know what the right training is for that job. They're great jobs, they're high paying jobs. They're extremely stressful. They are. The expectation on an inspector is super high.
And the oversight is nonstop.
Yes. And if there is one mistake, how did you miss that?
Yeah.
Right. And out of the 5,000 things you're putting together. So I think that's where I'm often talking in the welding industry about career paths, is like, I could have gone so many different ways. I wish I would have finished my B ticket. That would have served me very well.
Mm-hmm.
But now in my day-to-day work, I kind of use my business degree more than anything. So it's like, I don't know what the right answer is to guide someone in their career path, but I know being in and around the welding world and different jobs, there's just so much opportunity. I could have gone NDE route and just done
Mm-hmm.
NDE and UT and API inspections and on-site inspections. I could have gone weld procedure development, full weld procedure development all the time. There's a shop here that deals with specialty. You could go equipment side, automation. There's so many different facets within the welding industry that there's just so much opportunity. And as one of the major manufacturers of welding equipment, now we're seeing the introduction of laser welding. We're seeing different processes coming up and the efficiencies coming through. So it's a really exciting time, I would say, to be in it. It's just, I don't know what the right place to go and specialize is.
Well, and I don't think there is a right place. Like, I mean, I just had a phone call this morning from a recent doctoral grad from Edmonton who's got his PhD done. He's a registered engineer now. He's out in the real world at, 27, 28 years old, and got his first job. And his first job was as an inspector, making, I think, 56 or 57 bucks an hour right out of, first job, which to everyone listening is going to be like, awesome, good for you, great job. He called me today because he's so torn because he hates it. Right? I didn't go to school for 8 years to be an inspector, but why am I complaining? I'm making great money. I'm going to make more money. Like, this is, this is going to blow up. And in 5 years, I'm going to be in the 60s and 70 bucks an hour, which nobody would say, oh, that's a job. Everyone would say, good job, way to go. But for him being like, my education, this isn't what I wanted to do. Even though I do know how to do this, he's like, I feel like this is someone else's job. Like, there should be a welder with a level 2 doing this instead of a PhD engineer doing this. Even though we both can do the job, he's like, I feel like I'm better utilized somewhere else. He's like, what should I do? And I was like, well, that's a large question to ask because, maybe you stick it out for a year and make some money, make some contacts. Like, I mean, you got to network. No matter how you swing it, you got to network if you want those dream jobs. You're not going to find those jobs sitting at home. So you got to network, and this job will, you're going to be a level 2 inspector. You're doing stuff. So that's going to open up a lot of stuff for you that you can get out there and meet people. And through your work, I bet you find the company that you can look at applying to try to go to. But to your point, the pathways are tricky, and where do you want to go? And you may not end up where you thought you were going to be, right? Which is going to lead me to my next question for you. You did a little bit of welding, and then you said, like you wish you would have finished off that B level, which is, journey person, pressure ticket type of level welder. Well, the president's now in Canada, which is very unique. It's happening in Canada cross because now there's a legal precedence for it. But your Red Seal journey person ticket now has to be seen as the same level as a degree. It is the bump in pay. It is considered an educational bump. So if you work for a company and they say, hey, if you got a bachelor's, you get paid X, but if you have a master's, you get paid X. Well, if you have a degree and a Red Seal, you can get master's pay because it's considered an educational bump. And a lot of people don't know that. I was actually a part of that process like 8-9 years ago because it happened to me. I got hired at the college, and I went to university for philosophy, but I had 2 Red Seals. Well, I was only getting paid for my university education. I wasn't getting paid for any of my trades education. And I was like, how is that fair? My trades education is just as hard and just as in depth. I challenge any person with an engineering degree to go write the welding Red Seal. It's no joke. It's a tough test,
Yeah, definitely.
And if I invested, with 2 Red Seals, that's 7 years education. If I invested that education into that, you're going to tell me that that's not worth pay. And so, I had to fight it through the union. I had to go through lawyers, and the university I was working for had to agree to say, yes, education is education, because they can't pull that snob move and be like, oh, you went to a trade school. And yet the on the other side of it, they're like, yay, go to trade school. It's just as great, but you're not going to back it up with a paycheck. I don't think so, right? So
no, for sure. And I think that's exactly it, is that, like, One of my colleagues I worked with, he was a wet graduate as well as a journeyman B pressure ticketed welder, and he knew so much about metallurgy. Like he would sit in on meetings with advanced engineers, and like he was so strong technically, and he could go in there and weld it. He was certified, and then he had the background of the schooling, and so it was such a valuable combination to have, and he was paid accordingly for it. He was paid very, very well, and he should be. And I think that that's a big thing with pay, is that like, what am I worth versus what do I offer?
Yeah.
And I think that that's something that always has to be kind of in the back of someone's head, is that like, am I a profit maker or am I a profit drainer?
Yeah, that's a tough conversation, especially with young people in the industry when they come out and they got dreams of making big money, or they see mentors making big cash and they think, well, I want to do that. They forget the 20 years of investment that led to that point, where you come out of college, school, training, or into the trades as not a big profit plus for your company. There's training involved. There's investments. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to need other people to sit in on you with jobs, which pulls them away from another job. So for many years, while you become mentored into your, respective industry, you're not going to be the one that's really championing change, championing process flow, championing profits. You're going to be someone, and I'm not saying you're lazy. I'm not saying nothing that you're bad. You're trying your best. You're doing your best, but there's only you got to learn. There's things you learn from industry. And not industry in general, industry specific to like where you're working, because every single shop runs differently. So you got to figure that angle out. Like, how do I make this company money? Not that company money or the one I was at 5 years ago, but where I am right now, right?
Well, and I think that that's where the industry is changing. Like, there's recruitment, and I'm in many shops often, and I can see it in, there's a shop down in Lethbridge, a very large welding company, and they pay very high, and they have a humongous staff. And I see shops locally here that are trying to retain, and their pay is not even remotely competitive, and they're unable to get people, and their shops are not on public transit. And so it's like there is those challenges. So I think meeting young people where they're at, and I think a big thing that we don't see, I would say, on the white collar or the professional side, is that they're the mentorship. And so people are retiring and giving the person like a month to train. And these are 25-year people, and I'm going like a month. And so that is very difficult for businesses, because they don't have the willingness to invest in that long-term mentorship. And I think younger people are absolutely want to have someone, shape their career and show them a good direction and give them options. I think there's just some incredible young people out there that have such a good attitude. And I think sometimes there's this joke about younger people, oh, they're not working as hard. And I'm like, I don't see that.
No, I don't see it either. And it's something that we've created. Like, we, from the 80s, I'm a 70s kid. I was born in 75. So, I started welding in 93. So, early 90s, my career, I would say this is like not a great time in industry. It was pretty rough. It was misogynist. It was sexist. It was racist. And, I seen, and kind of still fairly unsafe. The big safety movement hadn't come in. We're welding with no masks on stainless and cast and all the things now that they tell you will kill you. We did without a second thought. And there's people that hold on to that being like, those were the good old days. Like, no, they weren't. No, they weren't. Today's the good old days. Today's going to be the good days, because now people that are going into the industry are safe and clean and more efficient. And not only have we created these expectations for industry, we've created them for our schools. So all our kids have been raised now in safe, supportive environments where we try not to overload them and pressure them and create anxiety and all these problems. And then we expect them to go back in time 20 years to a shop where that's exactly what they're going to get. Well, no, you can't do that. We have to tailor ourselves, us old guys, to the youth, because they're the future. We're on the way out like the dinosaurs. As much as we hated our boomer parents and how they worked, that's how they look at us. And we got to accept that. And we need to change our language and be proponents of the change and proponents of the new systems. I agree with you. They're not lazy. They're just being careful. They're not, it's not that they don't want to do the job. They don't want to do it wrong. There's a few differences there, right?
Well, they're way more efficient. Like
Mhm.
way more. And it's like, we see it with like engine drives and wire feeds off them, and they're doing things way faster, way faster. And like, then this idea, and I'm like, automation in particular, like our cobot will do 4 times what a hand welder will do. Our robotic cells will do 7 times. So the equipment is just advancing so fast. And what I see sometimes in the shops is going, well, I'm going to buy this $250,000 welding robot setup, and I'm going to hire someone off the street to run it. And I'm going like, whoa. This should be like your highest paid person.
Yeah.
Like, what do you mean? And so it's the mindset changing, because I'll go in shops that have like, I was in a shop the other day that had $10 million with automated setup. They have specialist computer engineers running this equipment, and that is their job. They run it all day, every day,
Yeah.
and their production is enormous. And so that it's kind of the culture change and retaining. Okay, so if you want to get someone to come in here, you have to pay them, you have to train them. Like, they're not disposable. And I think that that's where good shops are really succeeding, and they're putting in programs, and they have, like, we work with Red Bench on their LGBTQ plus initiatives.
Mackenzie and Jolene, redbench.ca, props.
Yeah, exactly. We work with women in trades. We work with all different types of groups, from, with CWB, with AWS, with Miller, with ITW, like, and that's where the industry is moving forward. And I think it's good things to hang our hats on, because there's many men with daughters and granddaughters and sons, and it's like, we want them to have positive work experience.
Yeah.
So I think that's like, working for ITW, the culture is so strong there, and that's the thing. Like, we just don't have conversations that are negative, because it's just not part of the culture. And so I see it going into businesses. We see it in the sales side of things. And so I think the industry is kind of, there's a fight going on right now between the old school and the new push. And I just think that there is just things that new people are not going to accept. They do not want to miss their personal lives. They do not want to miss weekends. They do not want to work 24/7. I used to work on site. I'd be up there for 30 days straight, come back for 3 days, go back for 27 days. It was a lot of work, and quite frankly, probably not the best life planning. So I just noticed people, they want, I think it's fair.
Yeah. And I tell a story sometimes, and it's very interesting how people take it. When I was trying to get out of the blue collar and into the white collar, that's a tough ceiling to break through. You're trying to come out off the floor as a welder, and you're trying to prove that you have other skills and you can get into these desk jobs that they're not really welcoming to the blue collar people, right? And I would say maybe the supplier side is probably one of the best at bringing in blue collar and into the white collar world, but generally it's not that acceptable. And during that process, I was basically working 2 full-time jobs to try to meet expectations on 2 different things. So I did, I think, 138 or 139 days straight of 2 full-time jobs. So 16 hours a day, weekends, no time off. I just, did this, and it was an insane, I was a zombie. Like, I was in some other hallucinogenic world where I was welding all night and teaching all day to try to get a full-time job at the college. And when I tell older people that story, they're like, wow, good for you. You did what you had to do. Yeah, put in the time, and you got to where you wanted to be, which is a true statement. I did. I pushed through, I put in the time, and I got to where I wanted to be. When I tell that story to young people, and it happened to me very specifically about 2 years ago, someone said, what did your kids think about that? And I said, what kids? Because I missed their birthdays, I missed their school trips, I missed their, Christmas. I wasn't home, I was in the field. It was basically a half a year I didn't see, speak, or talk to anyone in my family about anything. So, yes, I got to my end goal. Was it would I want anyone else to do what I did to get there? No, I don't. And I think that that's something my generation needs to be like more reactive to, is that just because it sucked for us doesn't mean it needs to suck for you. How's about we make it not suck for really great blue collar people to climb into the ranks? How's about we make that transition easier for them so that they don't have to miss their kids' birthdays and Christmases just to get a better job, you know?
I totally agree. And I think that there is a little bit of resistance happening. And I'm seeing it in shops. Like I was in the shop the other day, very successful. They put in like $1 million worth of robotic equipment. And it was interesting working with their young welders, and they were very skilled TIG welders, running stainless, running aluminum. And they said, oh, he starts at 6 a.m. and he starts at 8 a.m. And I kind of was like, what? And they were like, that is what works for their life. And I was like, wow, that is unique. Like I've never heard of that. It's like, this is when we go, this is when we start. And they worked really hard. They were really polite young men to deal with. Like it was just kind of a culture change I saw where it was like, no, this works for me and this is what I need. And it doesn't work like that for every shop, but it was just kind of interesting seeing some of the modifications that they're willing to do for their team to keep people happy and keep people working. And I just think that there's more of that coming in. I was in another shop in Calgary and they had every flag of each employee where they were from in the world.
Oh, that's so cool.
Hanging up in the shop. And so you walk through the shop, brand new facility, great guys to deal with, great guys and gals. And it was very different culture, like just walking through. They're very proud. And then the flags, and you walk in the front door and there's pins up on and there was a map of the world and you know, they had ping pong tables for social events they did. And like, it was very unique for a welding facility to see this kind of cultural change. And I think well needed and what's coming because
it's absolutely needed. Like I always, you know, I welded for 27 years on the tools with my company and different companies. And in those 27 years, I never once had a female boss ever. I never once had an Indigenous boss ever, you know, and you would think statistically I should have, but we just never did. And that, like, I mean, I'm just one person. That's something that definitely needs to, hopefully we're on the path now to correct those things. And there is some resistance, but with time, those resistances will be gone. There was a couple statements I heard years ago called, the terms were knowledge hoarding, that the Gen X and boomers are knowledge hoarders. You know, we figured it out. This is our knowledge. I'm not going to just give it to you. Yeah. It's like I own it. It's got a fee somehow. But what happens now is that the younger generations are like, well, I'm not willing to pay your weird fee for your knowledge. So when you go, you're going to just go with your knowledge. And then what good did it do? What good did all that stuff I learned do when I retire and take it with me? And then I watch the industry struggle, an industry that served me well, but I'm not willing to give back, you know?
Yeah,
all right,
for sure.
So this is a perfect time for a break, because when we get back, we're going to talk about how you ended up at ITW and then about giving back specifically, because I think that's a big part of what you do, what your company does, and also your personal life. So stay tuned here at the CWB Association. Here I am with Tabor Holt, and we're going to continue talking right after this break.
The CWB Association is new and improved and focused on you. We offer a free membership with lots of benefits to anyone interested in joining an association that is passionate about welding. We are committed to educating, informing, and connecting our workforce. Gain access to your free digital publication of the Weld magazine, free online training, conferences, and lots of giveaways. Reach out to your local CWB Association chapter today to connect with other welding professionals and share welding as a trade in your community. Build your career, stay informed, and support the Canadian welding industry. Join today and learn more at cwbassociation.org.
And we are back here on the CWB Association podcast. My name is Max Ceron, and I'm here with Tabor, coming to us from Calgary. He works for ITW, which is part of the Miller, Hobart, Cherkaskis. Who else is in there? Bernard. Yeah, there's a few in there now.
yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah. So we were talking about, you know, kind of work in general. Great conversation. But for yourself, you know, with a business background, a little bit of welding, been in some shops, how did you end up at ITW? You know, because even out in the West, ITW Miller didn't have as big a footprint as it does now. So, you know, I'm not sure how long I'm doing the timing in my head. You you finished school, you had all your engineering stuff by 2009, you said. So, now what did you do in between just getting started, or is this like your first job out of college,
No. So I graduated 2012.
Okay,
so
right.
I was working as an inspector for about 6 years. And so I had worked on mostly SAG-D equipment, but then I started getting into some specialty compressor projects, and I was a QA manager for a company at Edmonton. And so I was always around welding, packages, structural steel, pressure pipe vessels, packaging equipment with electrical and running a compressor on it, running
Hydraulics, whatever.
Yeah, like various types of gases on it. So it was like LNG we dealt with oxygen, we dealt with severe H2S, hydrogen, many different types of gases. And so I worked there for about 4 years. And so the reason I left is the projects just had me traveling so much. I was traveling, our manufacturers out of Europe, and I was just gone all the time. And so I had an opportunity in Edmonton. And so right when I switched my career, I kind of got more into the business side. And so what I really started getting into was business development, aka the fancy word for sales. And so what is so helpful about having a welding background on the sales side is that the work that we do is very specialized, on any real type of welding business. So if you this is the conversation I always have, is that they'll hire an engineer to do sales. Well, the engineer doesn't have the personality. Then they'll hire a salesperson.
Sorry to all the engineers out there, but truth.
Myself included. And then they'll hire a salesperson who doesn't have the technical background, so they can't handle themselves in the meeting. So there's a real challenge. And that's where it opens up the door, I think, for people that have experience in welding and pressure equipment and construction. And we're starting to see that, and they're getting labeled business development, product specialist, things of that nature. And so how I ended up joining ITW was I was working at a company in Calgary, and we did welded overlays. And again, overlays are there. Mm-hmm. That is something that I never learned in my career in school. I never dealt with until I started working there. Overlays, you are welding metal on metal, diluting it together, getting a new potion. The metallurgy side, the mechanics on that you could go your whole career in just that. And so when I talk about the welding opportunities, and so what happened was the person in my position was retiring. He had been with the company for 27 years. He was a welder, and he had a welding engineering diploma from SAIT as well, engineering technologist. And so he had 27 years experience. And so they were looking for somebody to take over the role from him. He was technically unbelievably strong and was doing the sales side as well. So it was a very difficult position to staff. I'm not saying that I'm the greatest person. There's some
pretty specific skills, though.
It is, because you were driven by your sales numbers. Mm-hmm. But your day-to-day life is very technical and heavy on the technical side. And with ITW and Miller, like, you're combining welding wire with machines, packaging, and selling a technology and selling a solution.
Like solutions, right? Yeah.
And so that term gets thrown around a lot on YouTube pages.
Yeah.
There you gotta sell and call, and it's like, it's not really that kind of business, because the people have the equipment, they know you sell the equipment, you're competing against, for our market, really, Lincoln is our biggest competitor, and Lincoln is very similar to Miller in the sense that they're built in Cleveland, we're built in Wisconsin. I've worked with both sets, great equipment on both ends. We have some newcomers like Feronius is coming in. They have different offerings, ESOP. And then we also have a lot of Asian equipment coming in as well, and Canadian equipment. And so it's just a matter of, adding value to customers is the biggest part of my job. And then supporting the distributor and their sales teams. But also it's hard to put the person in this seat, because you may draw on your technical experience, or you may draw on your business experience, but at the end of the day, it's all welding centered.
Well, the people that, let's see, how do I put this with as much political softness as I can? So like Lincoln and Miller, they both have a very similar game plan in that they like to hire people that are within the welding industry already. They're not real keen on bringing in fresh people. So, they're usually looking for welders or engineers. And when it's welders, they're usually looking for people that are a journey person or a higher level to convert into sales or development team players, which is exactly to your point, right? And a lot of people that have been historically with the Miller and the Lincolns, which in the West was kind of the only two colors. When people talk about ESAB, out in the West, ESAB's never really hit a footprint. And in my almost 30 years on the floor, I never had once an ESAB rep walk into my shop and be like, hey, it wasn't a thing, And Fronius, well, they're new on the block, so they're coming around, but same, like they don't have the footprint. So you're looking at the red and blue, and that's kind of like the battle. And it was always down to just pricing, really, because there wasn't really this one's better than that or that one. They each had their deal, right? Now with the new markets coming in, you got the Everlasts and the Canawells and the Asian backed market, which a lot of people will say, well, at the end of the day, every machine's Asian because even if they're built in Cleveland, everything still comes from wherever. But be that as it may, what they're really finding is the suffering for anyone that left is the support, right? So you get used to having that Miller support or that Lincoln support because that's part of what you're paying for. Like, oh yeah, well, this Miller machine is 26 grand, the Lincoln's 28 grand, but the Asian version's 7. Well, why would I ever do that? It's like, okay, we'll buy it. And then when it breaks down, you're going to spend 10 sending it back and getting a new one. Right? Like, I mean, it's you're looking for that support. Plus it's the phone call. And like you said, the solution end of it, which is like, hey, I got a project coming up. I'm not sure which wire I should use. There's some of that support, which is great to have because if you're a big company, you have your own solution specialists. You have your own professionals that have that extensive materials understanding, consumables understanding. But if you're an under 10 employee shop, you don't know everything. And you might be getting jobs walking in the door that you're like, oh man, I may have gotten in over my head. Hopefully somebody I can reach out to can help me that's not going to charge me more, right? It's just part of the service. And ITW and Lincoln still, I'm not, I don't want to throw the competitor's name out in your podcast too much, but it is something that's offered, which is that value, that's the value prop there, right?
Well, for sure. And that's part of, I think, our ability to walk into shops is like, I'll oftentimes have to connect our feeders to their equipment, find solutions. If they're having a problem with our wire, then they switch other, like, so we work around each other. We know each other well. And like, I think that's the offering that we definitely, to your point, like, do you need the support? Do you not? If you're a hobbyist working in your garage, maybe not. If you're running a full blown fab shop, your 16 grand saving on a machine, you could burn that up in a day. Mm-hmm. Right. It's like, and that's really the things that we see. And like, we invest in our support. Like we have specialists down there that are on the machines all day, every day, touching wire. And I know for me as an employee of the company, like I can call down and get a welding engineer on the phone in 3 minutes and we can troubleshoot something. And so it's just a really unique offering. And we are lucky. There's very few people base. So they're just such little amounts, specifically engine drives or, mobile equipment or bigger pipe equipment, right? It's very, very small.
Well, those pipe works, they're pretty slick machines. I've been playing with them lots. I was running my Red Seal students on the new pipe works because of that RMD on the open route MIG. That was a win-win situation, and I actually had apprenticeship try to come down on me being like, you can't use that process to weld on the Red Seal exam. It's like, actually, show me in the codes where it says it can't.
It's unbelievable.
Codes-wise, it's perfectly fine. Yeah.
Oh, and that is a problem with the apprenticeship we see is that wire is year 1, and then year 3, they're onto different processes, and then they finish, and they're a journeyman going to do their B ticket, and then the shops are saying, you need to do RMD or STT on a route. And they're going, we didn't touch. And so that's something that we're always pushing back on is that we want to see it more involved, more in the training and what you're doing. That's exactly.
Well, and Alberta fights apprenticeship. I shouldn't say that. It's a struggle to update the apprenticeship model across Canada. Some provinces more than others. But the modified waveform, which is the CMT, the STT, the RMD, and all the processes. they are a reality, and they're basically becoming standards on all machines. How that must be represented in learning curriculums. You can't have the technology outpace the education. Like, that's just not proper, right? I don't send, my kid to mechanic school to learn to build a 38 Chev. He needs to build a 2024 Chev, because that's going to be the job, right? Like, and that's always a tricky thing, but I shouldn't even brought it up, because that's a whole nother episode of its own that we can get into. What I did want to ask you is about the educational spectrum, because that's something that I've noticed myself in the last, I'd say, even just 5 years, that ITW has been pushing a lot more into, is that educational spectrum. It was something that was heavily dominated by other players in the market for a long time. And I see now the investments that Miller, ITW are doing in education. They have a whole new education branch now. In the U.S., Patricia Carr, I think, is running it down there. She's amazing. I'm interviewing her on Friday, actually. She's an amazing woman. But in Canada, I'm seeing the push to, create programs for schools, to give discounts for colleges and high schools on machinery, and get, into that space, which getting into the education space doesn't make you money. Like, that's not a money maker. Schools are strapped for cash. So if you want to work with schools, you're basically selling things that cost, if not less, just to get your brand in there. But that is a resounding long-term effect that I think people are realizing. If your kids are grinding with Walter, 40 years from now, you're going to find Walter in their garage. That's how it works, right? And what have you seen in your time with Miller and ITW, change or grow in terms of supporting education?
That's so funny. You're talking about kids. I was at a trade show last week, and the guy was wearing a John Deere hat, and his son was like 3 years old, wearing a John Deere and had a John Deere toy. And he said, you think you guys convert people young? John Deere does it when they're like baby.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, like ITW is 100% focused on education, and like they give very big discounts for lab purchases. And so, like, in particular in my territory, like Lethbridge College has got a lot of Miller equipment. SAIT, we work very closely with, they have a lot of Miller equipment. And so what I think it is that they really truly see the value in the education and pushing this equipment in there. And then also, when we're sourcing the type of equipment, we really want to make sure they have a diverse lineup. And I think that's something that maybe isn't realized, is that we want to see them with the pulse equipment. We want to see them with the proper TIG equipment, and if they're going to get into any different alloys and pipe works with the features out of those machines. And so ITW is 100% committed to education. And I think to getting the right equipment into these facilities, whether it be high schools, we're seeing it as young as junior highs, and then obviously the post-secondaries. Yeah. And so we also are seeing it with our VR welding equipment, like our augmented reality.
The augmented reality. Yeah, we got a few at CWB. Yeah, we got I think we bought 6 of them. We bought them.
Yeah, that has been, it's a very good tool to have in particularly a high school, because what I keep hearing is there is no person to teach.
Yeah.
And I think that this is a huge problem, is that my wife is a teacher. She taught for 5 years. And so if she was going to be pushed into the shop and now teach, because she's a union member and a teaching certificate, is that really the right person to teach shop? I don't think so. We should have electricians or welders or, maybe senior guys that want to do a little bit of a different job front. But I think there's a problem with the way we're doing that. And
it's a bit backwards, yeah.
And then the VR equipment is good because we're not burning gas, we're not burning wire, we're not burning students. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's a good way to get someone introduced. And what I really like about education point of view is you're putting a hood on. This will be my job.
It feels like work, yeah.
Yeah, and there's a loneliness to it. Yeah. That's the job, right? And some people love it and some people don't. And that's where I think it kind of gets someone thinking, like, is this really something I could do?
Well, I was welding while I was going through university, and I was doing my philosophy dissertations behind those hoods every night, man. Like, lots of time to think behind that little blue light, right? Like,
well, that's it, right? And I think that's getting people introduced to, welding,
Mhm.
or like the one particular one that comes up is underwater. Everyone talks about underwater. I want to be an underwater welder. Like, okay, most of the people underwater welding that I've talked to, it's more underwater construction
Mhm.
where you're down there and you're moving stuff and fixing stuff and fitting. And that's welding. A lot of it is fitting. Is that we have a pipe fitter, then we have a welder. Okay. I've been in fab shops where they do that. The fitters tack it, fit it, bring in, he's welding all day. A lot of shops I go into, the welders are fitting as well.
Yeah.
And you got to muscle around and read prints and know how to do geometry and
Work
like
with
that.
engineers. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And it's like, that is not the industry. We're not depicting it well enough in the sense of like, these are fabricators. They're not welders. Like, they're metal specialists. Like, and I think that that's something that when I talk to people considering it, I'm going, you can go, you start as a apprenticeship in welding, then get experience and work on the shop floor. Then you're on your way to become a super.
Yeah.
So now you need to probably do some management courses or whatever,
Mhm.
but it's a much different career, right? So you can go that full right road to leadership, or you can stay in a shop, or you can go on inspections, or you can go like, there's many different options. But I just think that like when we get into the education systems that have good equipment to use, and now they get to actually see about fitting it together. How do you tack it? Right? And that's, I think, where we sort of, the details get missed out.
Drop the ball a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, friends of mine will say, "Oh, I want to weld in my garage." I'm like, "Perfect. Okay, I can recommend you a welder, but do you have a chop saw? Do you have a grinder? And then it's going like, yeah, I don't know about this metal stuff.
Well, and metal's an expensive material to just plug away on, right? Like,
Yeah.
I'm just gonna go pick up a couple bars of steel at the shop to putz around in the garage. Well, that's $250. Like,
Yeah.
It's not lumber, and lumber's even expensive. But when I hear carpenters complain about the price of wood, I'm like, you don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, with the welding machines, and this is now your professional opinion, I'm going to ask. When you said you wanted to get like kind of the good spectrum of welders in front of students, I immediately had a thought just pop into my head from an experience last week. I was in Milton. But would you recommend like XMTs, Dynasties, the pipe works, the dual feeders? Like, what are the things you kind of put out in front of people? And the reason I brought this up is I was just at a shop. Someone plugged in a XMT to do something, and it was ticking. It was doing that ticking, right? And they're like, are they supposed to do that? I'm like, I don't know if they're supposed to, but every XMT I've ever had does. I don't know what it is, but I think that's just a thing they do. That not all welders do that, but I know XMTs seem to. And that made me think of that. Like, what do you usually tell people is a good starter industrial machine? Because I mean, there's obviously smaller baby machines, right?
Yeah, Dynasty is expensive for a TIG welder, a dedicated TIG welder, so that's why I kind of steer away from that. I think they're the best.
Well, I think they're the best TIG machines too. They really are amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, like, like I personally like an XMT is the work. It's the ultimate. You can get multi-process on it. It is a great machine. It can plug it into different types of power.
Mm-hmm.
A Pipeworks machine, like some of the labs I've seen have a Pipeworks, they have an XMT, and then they'll have a TIG welder, be a Max or a Dynasty or something like that.
Yeah.
So I think it depends on what the students are going to be touching. Like, if they're going to get into thicker aluminum and they want to do AC TIG, then we're talking about a little bit of a different machine. But I really like the XMT. It's a very universal machine. Value, super reliable. And so that's kind of what we see with labs, is that they'll take their equipment for 5 years and then trade it and get new stuff. So that stuff is sold usually before it gets there. Pipeworks are a much more expensive investment. Same with the Lincoln version of it. So I like it for pipe because it has characteristics for the curvature of welding on pipe. Is everyone going to see that or touch that? Not necessarily. And that's where it depends on, if I'm running a training facility in Edmonton for Nate welders, I want them touching pipe. I want them touching curved surfaces, right? If I'm running a shop in, let's say, Lethbridge, where we spend a lot of time, those graduates might go out and do a lot of
manufacturing
steel. Yeah, right. So their experience could be different, but I kind of like the universal abilities of one machine with multi-process like that, especially depending on their budget and how much equipment they want, because it is very costly to equip these labs. and it is nice to have multi-process machines.
Now, I was very fortunate to be in a very good shop at Sass Poly for so many years. We had a bank of XMTs, a bank of Dynasties, a bank of Pipeworks, and then a bank of Lincolns, and then 4 STTs. So like you kind of have the pick of the crop. But over the years of working with the different machines, it was like, okay, level 1s, we're going to start on the XMTs, right? Because this is very multi-purpose, very easy to move, not a lot of buttons. There's still tactile knobs that kind of make them feel more comfortable with what they're doing. Less mistakes because it's actually like a thing you got to move. And then the pendants came out for them that you could even then run Pulse and all the other toys on them just by buying the pendants, which was nice because these are 10-year-old machines that suddenly are just as good as new ones with just this, $300 add-on. Dynasties were for TIG class. These are for the TIGgers. The guys are going to learn how to TIG properly. We're going to play with the frequencies. We're going to play with the waveforms. We're going to show you the difference between the pulses and the timings and the pre's and the posts and all that stuff. But, you need a 10-minute startup time before you strike an arc because you got to go through all the settings. And then the Pipeworks is what we used for the red seals. So, like, this is now, again, back to multi-process, but this is the machine that's not going to break down, it's not going to hiccup. It's going to have everything. And then plus the synergic aspect of it is that it gives you a lot of feedback. So you can really let the machine do the work, really. And it's got the memory card. So the students can save all their stuff, save all your settings. Then on test day, there's no freaking out about what your settings were. They're on your SD card, bro. You're good.
No, for sure. For sure. And I think that's the understanding of industry, like talking with schools, that like what is the market? Where do people want to work? Are they going to see alloys? Are they going to, like, one of the shops I worked in, we did overlay with submerge arc down to 1.5 ID. I've never even heard of only sub arcs I've ever seen were on
10-inch and wider, like big.
Giant vessels. Like what? What? And so that's like you get into industry, you start seeing stuff, and you're like, what are we talking about? And like,
what size wire are you using? Just like a little tiny wire on a sub arc? Like what the heck?
yeah. And that's like I think the good thing about when you leave a trade school, or if you're in a wet program and you get to see and touch and feel the equipment, because you're going to have a lot more experience in the field, and like flux core and position, or if you're going to go metal core in the flat, like you're just seeing the options out there. And I think that's what makes this type of job challenging, is that you're just jumping in and out of the process.
Yeah, it is.
So you're like sub arc, we're going heavy, sub arc, we're going to do metal core, we're going to do twin wire. Now we're going straight into a cobot. We're doing a liquid cooled, and then it's like, so that's where experience really helps, is that you're able to speak on the different processes, see where these efficiencies come from, and what value you can add. And I think that's where welding gets a little bit. We're sort of in this exciting time, I find, is like the technology is really starting to jump. And like laser welding, we were learning like
2 years ago, laser welding was an 8x8 booth at FabTech USA.
Yep.
Last year, it was a 40x60 booth, and it was nuts. Like, I'm talking about a 3-year spread there. Like, it's exploding.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's where the excitement is coming, is that we're starting to see some investment in it, because the costs have gone astronomical, and labor costs, material costs. And so I think now we have a little bit more of a focus on it, where automation, new processes are really starting to come in. So it's a really exciting time to be involved in it. The other thing I'm noticing, maybe I'm unique in this, I'm seeing a lot more metal construction design of infrastructure, like bridges, way more exposed metal, buildings, way more exposed metal. So like our XMT lineup, 650s, 450s, 350s, infrastructure in the United States are just insanely busy. And so metal is becoming more needed, more required. The designs are changing.
Well, it's recyclable, and metal is green. The steel industry is a green industry, and people don't realize that. We're about as green as it gets. Like, yes, we have to use fossil fuels, but we'll figure that out as because it's just the electricity we're after. We don't really care where the electricity comes from. but nothing is more recyclable than steel. Like nothing. Well, glass, but we can't build buildings out of glass yet. Anyways.
Well, we're starting to see the steel is becoming more and more pure.
Yeah.
Because it is being recycled, filtered, cleaned, redone, smelted, and now the steel that we have problems with, we're not seeing it because you're exactly correct. It's so much more pure and easy to weld on. It's incredible.
What do you do with stubborn customers? You know, like you got the customer who's like, man, I need to make more money. My dang shop needs to be upgraded. And you go walk in the door and you're walking back into the 1970s and but it's a successful shop and they got cash and they have an idea that you're going to help them, but they're also going to struggle with the new tech and they're going to struggle with the transition. How do you approach that?
We had a client just like that. So we went into their shop and they're welding everything MIG with 040 wire, which is a very unique size.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very unique size and not that big.
Yeah.
And it's old equipment. So Miller has a team that we call PIT, Process Improvement Team. So what we do is we'll come into your shop, no cost. I qualify the opportunity and see like, okay, they need like whatever, 10 machines, something like that. We want to be over a certain amount because there's investment. People travel out and see it. So what we'll do is we'll go through your entire shop. We look at your filler metal. We look at your type of filler metal. We look at your machines. We look at everything. And then we're able to actually quantify the losses that you are having per year based on your setup. So for instance, this client, we were able to show them on a pretty detailed sheet saying, okay, if you switch from 040 to MIG, or just running MIG wire to an 045 metal core on a pulse setup on a new machine, we were able to get you this many efficiencies. Then we were able to jump on their hardened steels and go from an 040 to an 052. So just in those savings, man hours, equipment, and grinding discs and
cleaning, everything. Yeah.
I think we were able to get them a number like
how much? Sorry,
$275,000.
Wow, that's amazing, and that makes people be less put up less of a fight when they're like, "Wow, I'm losing that much money."
For sure. And so then the feedback I often get is like, "We can't afford it." Right? This equipment's too expensive, whatever. And I go, okay, well, I've met with a lot of leasing companies. So you can lease, many rig welders do. Mm-hmm. This is a ticket to ride, in my opinion. So, full setup, if you have an RMD with a machine, it's very expensive. I understand that it's a huge investment for your business. That also pays out.
Yeah.
So R&D feeders off of the 400 Pipeworks machine pay more than some of the other machines. So that's become very popular for mobile welding equipment. But I work with leasing companies. They know Miller, they know Link, and they would know equipment. And
don't you guys have Ready? Don't you guys own Ready Arc too? Like
we do not own Ready Arc. We work with Ready Arc a lot.
Okay.
And Ready Arc, it rents everything. But the problem is getting a smart feeder on a piece of equipment that can run, and that's where they're not as available. And so I've worked with leasing companies, giving people options, and so I think we were able to get a big Loop 400 and a feeder down to like $800 a month on a lease. He can then deduct it against his business. And so really kind of changed his mind because I was saying like, you're a rig welder now, you're a business owner.
Yeah.
You are not a welder. Yes, you're performing welding.
Your service is welding. Yeah.
Yeah. You are a business owner. So you need to make business decisions and cash flow is super important. And then we kind of had a different conversation on it. So he was able to lease it through the company. Then they did like a 66-month lease and whatever. But it was kind of, we can do that with people can do that with shops. There's financing opportunities. And so that's the way I answer those questions is I go, here's what we can prove in terms of a technology change. But if you are worried about financing, then here's an option too. So I think it's just sort of, I'm thinking with the welding side and then the business side. And I think that's where people feel, either they like me and say, great, this is good, or he's full of shit. See you later.
Well, it turns into that whole, you can't afford to not keep it up. Cause eventually industry leaves you behind. Like, I mean, businesses come and go and it's not because you do bad work. Everyone thinks that companies go under because they did bad work. No, companies go under because they don't keep up with the process, right? That's what buries a business. It's not work. There's enough work for everybody if you're on top of it. Right. It's just a matter, are you up and keeping up with the processes? Are you staying with what the industry best standards are, what's going on in the world, because people that are out there tendering jobs are looking for not just good work. Everyone says they're the best. Well, what are you doing to separate yourselves? Well, hey, we got new equipment. Hey, we got nice stuff. Those things might tip the scale in your favor, right?
Without a doubt. And that's exactly a competition. Like, okay, what's your factor diameter inch cost? Okay, this shop does it for $50 an inch, and they're doing a whatever MIG root with a stick cap and fill. Then the shop beside them is doing metal core root, metal core fill. Well, their efficiency is way up. So now their pricing is $50 diameter inch. These guys are 42. There you go.
Done. Yeah.
Right. It's not that complicated. And the other thing I tell people, up your efficiency and down your man hour requirements. So that means instead of having 9 welders, you need 7.
Well, I don't like that.
You know what? Everybody, I say that.
Yeah.
They're all screaming for.
Yeah, you're going to need more no matter what. I mean, the industry's not going backwards. Yeah.
Right? Like, and I'm like, pay those guys more.
Yeah, exactly. So one of the things that I know you are part of, and the whole kind of, the way you got on this podcast today was because we were doing a call out to the chapters across Canada saying, send us someone from your chapter that's doing cool stuff or that's a part of the industry. You're here representing the Calgary chapter, which is, I was just at a wonderful Calgary chapter event, at the SAIT the aeronautic facility there, which was super cool. So I want to ask you about your involvement with associations. And it's not necessarily the CWB, because as an engineer, as a welder, myself included, there's multiple associations that we're a part of throughout our careers, right? I still have my AWS membership. I still receive the journal. I still read through it, and I still hang out with my AWS buddies every time I go to the US. So in your opinion, how important are associations to this industry?
It is such a small industry. It's super important, I think, to be a part of them, both professionally and also troubleshooting. I think that is where I get a ton of contacts. And it's not even about like a networking. I'm going to sell people equipment. Now I'm in this role. I actually don't deal with people that much on that side, but I'm part of AWS Edmonton. And so it's our Alberta chapter. So I'm the chair for AWS. I'm in my second year of that. And so I've been involved with AWS since, I think 2012. I think it's the first year of my membership. And so AWS and CWB are similar, right? We have the American, the Canadian. And then now being involved with the Calgary chapter of CWB, I find that these events are super valuable to go to connect, to network. And I have colleagues they own their own specialty engineering companies that now a friend of mine asked, they said, we're trying to figure out new markets. And I said, this is the person to connect to, reach out to them, tell them I sent you, and so that they kind of know what's going on. And so then a colleague of mine works for the Alberta government, and they're doing some research on different welding techniques. And so they reach out to me and ask if ITW would donate some equipment for them to do this testing. And we were more than happy to do it. So it's kind of both sides. You get to work together, and you get to see new technologies. You get to be involved and see the industry. You get to see, where is there job shortages? Oftentimes you recruit and say, hey, you're graduating soon. We're looking for a new automation specialist. Or I think it's really good for people to get involved in terms of AWS will then sponsor someone like the Red Bench. The Red Bench is getting women into the welding industry. And so it's like, it just kind of spins off. We do golf tournaments. There's many things that I think professionally serve and personally serve as well. And I think that being part of these groups and attending the events is just, you get to meet people that are very like-minded and connect in a way that I think is pretty unique to our industry.
Well, and the volunteerism means that they're there to contribute. Like, as soon as you get a group of people that are willing to volunteer, they have an agenda. It's a good agenda. You know what I mean? It's like they feel like they are either there to learn or to give, or both, right? And that's a good vibe to be a part of. Like you said, you go to these meetings anywhere. I attend meetings all over the world, and every time I go to them, I know I'm going to make a few friends. I know I'm going to learn something, and I know someone's going to ask me for my opinion on something because I'm an expert in the things I've done, which are unique because everyone's path is unique. So there's specific things that I can help somebody with and save them a ton of headache of trying to figure it out on their own. And that, I was a chapter chair for the CWB, my chapter in Regina, for a decade before I even thought about ever working for CWB. And I got a lot of value out of it. And honestly, professionally, it helped my career immensely with the connections I made and getting, my story out there for what I was trying to do in terms of advocating for the community. And, I saw this skills gap coming 15 years ago. I was like, man, we're going to be screwed in 10 years. And then all of a sudden everyone's running around with their hair on fire being like, we're screwed. So, what are we going to do about that? Well, we got to bring this industry down to the street level where people can access it, understand it, and be a part of it. And it's not weird. It's just a part of our society, right?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think it's a way to get introductions to it. Like AWS sponsored a STEM event, so science, technology, engineering, in a small school district just south of Edmonton. And so I think the ages were like grade 3 to grade 9, young ladies, and we sponsored some of it. And I think that was kind of a way for people to see it. And they built I think it was a spaghetti bridge and things like that. So you're starting to see things. And, some of my peers are head welding engineers for R&D and they're women. And I think that's very important for younger women to see as mentorship for themselves. And I think that's where these associations are kind of breaking down barriers for sure. And I also think, like, from a, yes, we compete with other companies, but when it comes time for a golf tournament to raise money for students, I'll even reach out to our direct competitors and say, kick in some dough, sponsor a hole, and they're in. Like, it's people are 100%
it's agnostics. So, this is a neutral ground, everyone. Yeah,
they're great. No, they're awesome about it. And so I think that's where we get to see it, is that you get some, and I truly feel like they're enjoyable experiences. When we were at the event together 3 weeks ago or 2 weeks ago, it was great. I got to learn things about aviation, and I think we're switching it in ways that are not necessarily just welding focused. Like, we do the welding presentations,
just the whole joining world. Yeah,
for sure. And I think
starting that engine was super fun.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, like, when I show people something like an augmented reality welder at a trade show or bring it somewhere, you're really starting to view people's interest, where they're going, what? Like, because there's the Apple goggles now are popular, but I'm going, both us and our competitors have had stuff like this for years. And so it's really starting to be a durable industry. And I'm finding that to be where these events, and you're going on communities, and you're interacting with people that are not necessarily aware of it. And I think it's really starting to help change the image, because the image
glamorize the industry.
Yeah, the image was bad for a long time.
Yeah,
and I think that it's taking decades to fix.
Yeah, it's true. Well, I agree with you 100%, man. We're at the end of the show here. We're out of time. This has been a fantastic interview. One parting question before we go here. If anyone's out there and they're interested in looking into ITW services or even a career opportunity, how do they get a hold of their local rep? What do they do? What's the best way to get a hold of Miller?
You can actually go on millerwelds.com and then type in your area, and it'll say, who can I contact? It'll potentially connect you with a number of distributors. So that is one way to do it. The other way to do it is just all ITW. On their website, they'll have different 1-800 numbers, one for Canada, one for the United States. And then they'll connect you with my role of district manager. In Edmonton, there's 2 district managers. There's a district manager in Vancouver, Ontario, all across in these roles. And I think, just getting in touch with anyone from us. We're always hiring. They're always having job postings for really across North America, getting into Europe as well. So I think that we're always looking for people that are interested.
And if anybody wanted to get involved with one of the associations like AWS or CWB, what's the best way to do that?
Thing on the website. So if you put in Alberta American Welding Society chapter, you go on there, it'll have a listing of all the events. And then on that page, there'll be an email to contact. And obviously, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. My first name, Tabor, last name, Holt. just look me up on LinkedIn, or else you can email me at tabor.hole@millerwelds.com. Bug me. I can try to connect anyone. And for CWB, same thing. All the chapters usually have a homepage, and then there's a contact, and it's a general email. I'll volunteer.
Good. That was a skill testing question. I wanted to make sure you actually knew. So. All right, man. Well, I really appreciate it. Any shout outs you want to send to anybody or hellos?
No, I appreciate being on. It's great. I've had an exciting career, and I enjoy it. And about the welding side of things, I think that people need to get involved. And I think there's a lot of potential out there.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. And I really appreciate you taking the time today to be on the show.
Thank you very much.
Awesome. And for all the people that have been following along and making the show as fun as it has been, keep sending me the listings. It's been a busy month. We got lots going on. These episodes are coming out for the National Volunteer Month. We went through Black History Month. We got Women Empowerment Month coming up. We got FabTech Canada coming up in June. Then we got the National Trivia Night, March 21st. There's lots of things happening. And of course, we've been getting lots of interactions from online, lots of guests being sent to us through Instagram and LinkedIn. So always reach out at any time. Really appreciate it. And stay tuned for the next episode. We'll see you over there.
We hope you enjoy the show.